And as my great grandfather said just before they sprung the trap, accept no substitutes except for today. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the NYSA, where you can see what you've been missing in 3D. It's Saturday, but the master control booth is empty. Yes, Johnny Laser is on a secret mission and is taking a well-deserved break as MC, host, ringmaster, and chief mischief maker of the NYSA. Instead, you'll have me, Carlos Danger, as an inadequate yet earnest replacement. Some people claim that I'm actually Joe Pedota, the fellow who makes those jukeboxes, but frankly, I don't see the resemblance. It's definitely not a cheap trick to try and fool Interpol. We both deny that completely. But even away from his desk and that fabulous laser blazer jacket, JL has set the stage for this week's show. We'll be getting reports on the recent ISU conference in Japan, September 12th to 18th, another wonderful journey by Paul Hutchins, this time to Fairlie Hungerford Castle in the imaginary land of England, a jukebox collection of vintage stereo pairs, and much, much more. The International Stereoscopic Union is a global organization, and therefore membership is limited to Earth. But given that constraint, the ISU has done some marvelous things. Their big conference takes place every 2 years, or as we say in America, bi-weekly. Hundreds of people attend to see the incredible 3D projections, exhibitions, and to attend workshops, drop serious coin at the trading tables, and go on local excursions. We're going to hear all about that. They also publish an outstanding journal, Stereoscopy, in full color and high resolution, 4 times a year, or as we say in America, bi-weekly. It's 36 pages filled with news on all areas dealing with arts and technology of 3D. Again, limited to news from Earth, but still quite useful. Now, I'd like to throw the spotlight over to our British correspondent and independent producer, Paul Hutchins, for another one of his delightful journeys. This time, we're going to a castle, Fairlie Hungerford Castle. Take it away, Dorothy.
The now ruined Fairlie Hungerford Castle, near the town of Trowbridge in southwest England, was the ancestral home of the Hungerford family for over 300 years. It was built around 1380 by Sir Thomas Hungerford, who became the first Speaker of the House of Commons. Sir Thomas's son Walter was a soldier at the Battle of Agincourt, and in 1426 he was created Lord Hungerford and Treasurer of England. The family's coat of arms is displayed above the gatehouse. The castle was partly surrounded by a dry moat, and its position on a hill afforded it more protection. Thomas Hungerford wanted to show off his wealth and designed the castle as a statement of this, with a massive square plan and towers at each corner. In 1441 the castle was increased in size by his son Walter. He added an outer court which included the village church, which he converted into the Hungerford family chapel and mausoleum. The main hall, which would have been lined with tapestries, was the principal meeting place of the castle, where meals, social gatherings and entertainment would have been held. An outside well provided a source of water and would have been deep enough to reach ground water level. Today it is filled with rubble. A small garden surrounds the chapel and leads to the former priest's house, which now serves as a small museum. This broken piece of a face mask jug dates between the 13th and 14th centuries. The Bible, dating from 1611, is known as He Bible because of a typographical error where the printers forgot to include the letter T in one section. The chapel contains the tombs of 2 generations of the Hungerford family and some historic and faded wall paintings. The gated tomb is of the first owner of the castle, Thomas Hungerford, and his wife. His feet are shown resting on a lion and those of his wife on a dog. This was a medieval form of symbolism for strength and power and loyalty to God and to the sovereign. On the southeast wall of the chapel is a 600-year-old wall painting of St George killing the dragon. St George is the patron saint of England. Beneath the chapel is a 17th century crypt which contains 6 macabre lead coffins. They are known as anthropod or human-shaped coffins and are the finest collection of their type in Britain. 2 are for children, and 4 of the adult coffins have moulded faces which may be death masks. There is much more to the history of Farley Hungerford Castle than can be mentioned here, including scandal, murder, bankruptcy and sex crimes. And you can find out more by visiting the webpage of English Heritage. And that's all for now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thanks, Joe.
Another wonderful journey. Of course, I want to ask you about all the sex crimes that you mentioned, but I'd like to talk a little bit about 3D first.
Sure.
You do something in these images that I always find really compelling. A fence or a wall on the left hand of an image that kind of visually draws you in. It was a feature of several of the shots that you had. I don't want to call it a cliche, but the use of line.
Call it what you want.
Well, not a technique, a 3D technique. It for me it really increases the sense of depth. Even sometimes under just a partial wall, and giving you kind of the atmosphere. There's a real rounded space there. Were these original 3Ds? Were these converted?
Well, most of them were W3s. Some were Cha-Cha on my phone, and 1 or 2 were taken with a Fuji 2D SLR camera, which I then Leopixed. So most of them are W3s.
Now, maybe you could talk a little bit about Leopix has changed their formatting, right? It is now a fee-based service.
Well, so far, if you want side by side, it's free. There is I believe there is a charge if you want to have the wigglegrams, where the pictures vibrate like that, and you have to buy a number of credits in order to do that. How much the credits are, I don't know, but when I've been save them in that format by accident, you start off with 500 credits by default. Maybe it's 20 credits a time, so you could still do quite a lot of those wigglegrams and still not have to pay. But the side-by-side ones so far are free.
I have not used Leopix since this change, but I did go to the site, and I saw that as a LoomPad purchaser, I had 498 credits. Not quite 500.
Not 500. No.
Quite 500.
Yeah.
Well, they must like you.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they haven't found out yet that I'm using it so much. But I think they have improved the software in that when you had things like TV aerials or something, or railings even, so on, they would never actually, or flagpoles, the top part would never line up properly between the right and the left images. But now they're all straight, so it's very good, I think.
Well, it absolutely true that software has continued to improve. I look at results even from things I did 6 months ago, and can see the change. Part of what's so wonderful about being a 3D fan in this era.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's exciting times.
And for for most people here, I think most people have probably been involved in 3D long enough to see the peaks and the valleys, the times when the general public is really interested, and then the times when nobody but us is interested in. But 3D seems to be expanding in very significant ways in this century, and I'm happy that we're all here and present for that. Dorothy, I'd like to see if we could ask you to go into the projector room, put that reel on, and see if we can roll them for the next jukebox. Welcome to today's edition of the Anaglyph Jukebox. You never know what you'll find on the old jukebox. Let's press B31. Okay, we've got selections from the Dickinson collection in 3D. Diane Dickinson spent part of her youth in her family's antiques business. They lived over the shop in Wolfsboro, New Hampshire, so she was familiar with stereo views and home-style stereo viewers from an early age. Over the years, she's amassed a great number of vintage and antique stereo cards, some of which are stored alongside several viewers in a massive old box designed for this purpose. A few are completely without identifying marks, but most are from recognized firms like Underwood & Underwood, the Keystone View Company, Griffith & Griffith, T.W. Ingersoll of St. Paul, Minnesota, and H.H. Bennett, Kilbourne City, Wisconsin. There are dozens of themed selections the jukebox could make out of all this material. Too many choices. So what follows is a bit of a grab bag. These selections were all images that stood out immediately, so the subject matter does jump around quite a bit. A few of these views will be familiar to experienced collectors. Chicago Ferris wheel from 1893. The hand and torch of Lady Liberty displayed at the 1876 Philadelphia Centennial. Jacob's Ladder, Mount Washington Railway. A Beauty in Bright Stockings from 1902. The wreckage of the battleship Maine, where 266 men perished on February 15, 1898. A crowded beach at Atlantic City, New Jersey. Why Don't You Do Right, performed by Peggy Lee with the Dave Barber Quartet, 1950.
If you had prepared 20 years ago, you wouldn't be wandering now from door to door. Why don't you do right like some other men do? Get out of here and get me some money too.
Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you. Beautiful. You can leave the projector room now and go have a smoke. We're going to move right along. We've got three correspondents who are going to talk in depth about the ISU Congress that took place between September 12th and 18th, or earlier this month. What I'd like to do right now is I'd like to go to Dennis Boersma, who is the president of the ISU. Dennis, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
We're going to come back to Dennis for a more detailed interview, but I'd like to ask him, he has a wonderful video of the opening ceremony, and I wonder if we can, Dennis, if we can ask you to present that now.
Okay.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So first, I'd like to go back to square one and fill in a little information. Maybe people are familiar, maybe some people are not. The International Stereoscopic Union has quite a history. It's a global organization, and therefore it is limited to Earth, but it's useful nonetheless. It actually goes back, Dennis was telling me, to 1975.
That's correct. It was founded in 1975 in a town called Wageningen in the Netherlands. That they organized the first international congress for stereoscopy. With a little technical background, with intention to see if they could harmonize definitions of stereoscopic images, color coding of left and right images, and so on. Because at that time you already had a number of clubs in different countries, like the Stereoscopic Society, the Dutch Society for Stereoscopy. In France there was a club, in Germany, all over the world. And in those days, there was still the analog days. Part of what the clubs did was exchange images by sending emails, postal mails, with their slides in groups. And so, say you have the group of 15, and there would be 15 slides from 15 different people within the package. And you send it to the next one, you replace your own images, send it on again. And that way you could share your images, you could get feedback from other people on your images. But it would be practical if you would do that internationally, if you had some harmonization of standards.
Absolutely.
At that time already, the different clubs held their own meetings in different countries, especially in Europe. It was already common practice that people would attend those meetings from other clubs in other countries. So a number of people came together and said, well, why not organize a really international congress to discuss these technical topics? And there also the ground was laid for the International Stereoscopic Union. A couple of people wrote the bylaws on what the club should be, how it should work. And they proposed that to all the attendants of the Congress and say, we advise the Congress to vote on establishing such a union. And since then we have the International Stereoscopic Union.
And two of the features of the ISU are your international congresses every 2 years, as we say in America, bi-weekly, and also 4 times a year. You publish a wonderful journal. Could you tell us a little bit about stereoscopy, the journal of the ISU?
Well, stereoscopy. This is the current issue. It's already number 134. So it's written by and for the members of the ISU. So it has articles on different topics, technical, cultural, say a lot of images in side by side. So the articles are provided by the members. The images are provided by the members. And we have an editor at this time. It's George Semmelis from the US, who puts it all together.
Dennis, that's so nice. You're giving a newcomer a break.
Yeah. Well,
you know that young Dr. T. He's got a future in 3D. I predict. Now, I'd like to shift focus just quickly. You're just back from the latest Congress, and this took place in Japan. Tell us a little bit about your experience there.
Yeah. So the ISU organizes every 2 years a congress somewhere in the world. So it moves around from Europe, US, Asia, and this year it was in Japan, in Tsukuba. It's about 50 kilometers north of Tokyo. And for those of you who are familiar with the 3DCon, there are similarities between the 3DCon and the ISU Congress, in the sense that it has excursions to local cultural and technical features which are interesting to visit and to make new photos. We have stereo projection, stereo theater, and we have workshops on specific topics, and trade fair where both companies but also individual members show their capabilities, what they do. So this year there was a stand from, for instance, from Kendall, who makes the Cook Amigo camera. He even presented a workshop where they were asking the attendants, okay, what do you like about the camera? How can we improve the camera? People from Canon were there.
They seem to be very interested in getting feedback.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful to see. Dennis, did you get to go on many of the excursions?
I didn't attend all the excursions, but took a number of them because.
What was your favorite?
I think my favorite was to the historic town of Sawara, because there you still have the old wooden traditional houses. Because if you land in Tokyo, you are in the big city, a lot of skyscrapers, and a lot of the authentic Japan is not really there anymore, the historical authentic Japan. And this old town, it was an important town in the Edo period in the 17th and 18th century. And since then,
Edo was the old name for Tokyo. Yes, Edo.
Yeah. So, and since then, the interest for the town was declined. So it was not interesting to flatten it and put on high rises. And now it has come back. It's a bit similar to what happened to Český Krumlov in Czechia, where we had the previous ISU Congress, also an historic town that was forgotten for a long time, and recently, was built up again. And you still have the really historic feel of that town. So that was interesting.
One thing I remember reading about the Japanese wooden architecture is that they largely do not use nails or screws. It's mostly dovetail joints. It's all wood on wood connections. I didn't check it personally. I didn't look for nails in the wood, but I think you're right in the area. Yeah. There's a style called a Japanese A-frame farmhouse. There was one that was shipped from Japan to the United States and turned into a restaurant, and it's one of the features that they boast of. There's not a nail or a screw holding this building together. Everybody pray. Now you also have some shots, a selection of images that you could show us from Japan?
I have a couple of images that gives an impression of the different excursions and what was visible there. So this is Tokyo. Not the typical traditional Japan, but a good way to start. So someone may recognize here George Philosophus as an astronaut. So the excursions, they looked at the technical features of Japan, historic, the traditional Japan, the culture, the culinary, and so on. So this was one of the excursions with the focus on the modern technical Japan with space, and they have an particle accelerator for fundamental physics, research. And this is a stone quarry in Oya, which we visited. So that's more into a mountain, and this is also near there. So when you're in Japan, a lot of the signs are in Japanese, and in the big cities you also have sometimes English translation, but a lot of the signs and also in English. But nowadays with Google Translate on your mobile phone, it's easy to translate that by just pointing the camera of your phone on the Japanese signs, and it will translate it for you.
Do you remember what the warning was here? What were you?
Didn't translate it, but I think it means don't step on this rock, or don't go further because it's dangerous.
Unsafe walking.
Yeah. So, but that's more from the icon below than the actual text. So this is a large Buddha statue, about 90 feet high, and near one of the shrines. So that's more in the cultural part. This sign, this is a large bowl made of cedar wood, which is a sign of a sake brewery. And the caskets on the right bottom, these are caskets for sake.
Beautiful.
This is more the modern way of packaging sake. You even get to taste some of it, because it's quite a wide range of types of sake to on the market. So this is the Sawara historic town. We also made a small boat tour through a canal through the town. So there you have the more historic type of wooden houses.
You know, Dennis, if I could just hold you for a second. That previous image of the that small canal. It's been a bit of a running theme in recent NYSA meetings. We've noted that in England at an SS meeting, and in past NYSA meetings in France, canals prior to the automotive age were the means of getting goods in and out of cities. Cities and the surrounding countryside. In the imaginary land of England, they've now, since they have trucks, they no longer need them for that, and they use them for sightseeing excursions. They have something called narrow boats, which are wonderfully constructed things, and they're designed. I mean, you can tell that this is quite a narrow waterway. This is not very far. You can't have a very wide boat, or I don't think I could sit in a boat and get past there. So I'm a little on the large side. Beautiful capture. It looks like they're still bringing produce. I mean, it looks like bags of something. What do you know?
No,
what
these are live vests. Due to the anacliff, it's not clear, but this is I think they were yellow or orange, but these were live vests. So you could this is the type of boat we took a tour with. So we would sit on the sides. But you're right regarding the canals. If you look at Amsterdam, the historic center of Amsterdam had a lot of canals. That's because most of the houses there are actually warehouses when they were originally built. So it was all delivering and returning goods to the center of Amsterdam.
Well, where I lived in a section of Brooklyn that was heavily influenced by the Dutch, and people in America have garage sales. If you live in the suburbs, you put your goods out on your garage. Well, in the city, we would have stoop sales, and the reason that we had a stoop was the influence of Dutch architecture. What we would consider the second floor, they considered the first floor, and there was a long, a set of stairways that led up to that. Because they didn't have basements. Fascinating. Please continue.
Yes, stoep is a normal Dutch word for the sidewalk. We just spell it a little bit different with an OE instead of double O.
And by that
you pronounce it exactly the same.
By that you're referring to the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Okay. You people, you have a word for everything, don't you?
But we even use French words for it as well, because we also call it a trottoir.
Look, please go on to your next image. This is great stuff.
So this is also in the historic town of Savara. So again, you can see it's not made of wood. And what also struck me is the on the roof, you have the roof tiling and the ornamental on the top and on the side of the roof tiling. It's very typical in my point of view, from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a typical sweet that they serve before at the start of the Japanese tea ceremony. It's a bit of jelly with some fruit in it.
They almost look like fish shapes.
Yeah.
Probably was delicious. Do you have a picture of the ceremony?
They organized an event that they called the Stereo Tea, because in the old Japanese tea ceremony tradition, a cup of tea would be served, and you would take a sip of the tea, and you would pass the cup on to your neighbor. You would take a sip of tea, and the Japanese structured as comparable to how you look at stereo images in the viewer, where you look in the viewer, you pass the viewer onto your neighbor, and he looks at the image, and you discuss about the image. So they saw a similarity there. So they said, well, let's organize a stereo tea. Although because of COVID and so on, we do not pass the cup anymore on to the next neighbor. But we also were presented with a number of stereograms that were made by a member of the Tokyo Stereo Club, and he looked at those and passed these on to our neighbor.
Now, tell us if you can tell us a little bit about the local club that put this on. This is their first Congress.
Yeah, it was the first Congress in Japan, and it was it's a relatively small club. I'm not sure how many members they have. Probably in the 10th rather than the hundreds. And it was primarily the president, Hiroyuki Nakamura, and Takashi Sakitano, who promoted this and who started this. And I understood from then that only in the last 6 to 8 months, the other members of the club started to warm up to the idea and started to really get involved in the organization. And in the end, well, they had about 10, 12 members actively involved in running the whole Congress for the registration tables, the trade fair, and and so on. So, and they did a good job.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So, like I said,
Oh, you're making me
congress-
hungry, Dennis.
Yeah, the event was organized in the city of Tsukuba, and by chance, in that same week, they had some sort of food fair with a lot of food stands and beer stands and so on. So instead of going to a restaurant, we could also have food out in the open. They had tents and tables where you could sit with the food that you bought at the different stands. So a large variety of food from Japanese, but also pizza. So. This is the Dikut-Bushoku shrine, one of the important shrines in Japan. So this is a temple complex. Again, where you see more the traditional wooden houses. And it's also a lot of statues like this one. So that gives you really the feeling that you are in Japan. And they also have a lot of wood carving, so very ornamental. So that gives you more the historic and the cultural impression of Japan. So finally, this is the president of the Japan Club violating the window. And this was in the Trick Eye Museum with a lot of optical illusions. So this is a short selection of the images to get a small impression of the variety of things that were to see there in Japan. I think that is one of the things that I like about the ISU Congress, is that you see a lot of different countries and you get introduced in the different cultural aspects of a country by the local club. But you do it within the comfort of being in a group of people, you know, especially if you attend a number of congresses. So it's partly it's the same group of people you meet, and you are in a different environment and you experience different things from congress to congress.
Well, Dennis, thank you so much for the video, for your selection of images, and for all the information that you shared with us. It seems that it wasn't a mistake to limit the group's activities to Earth. You know, just to be a global organization and not to have ambitions beyond that. Yeah. And I think you guys have. I mean, for just Earth, I think you guys are doing a really great job. Thank you, Dennis, so much. You know what I would love to do now? I'd love to see if we could get Bob Aldridge, who I believe has done everything there is to do in 3D. Is there anything in 3D that he hasn't done? And Carlos Danger's favorite 3D maven, Lawrence Kaufman. Lawrence is also, for everybody who's accessing the chat, has put in some great links. There's a current link now about the information about the ISU conference. If you want to have more detail on that, well worth being a member. Well worth being a member. Even if you never get to one of their events, just to have your subscription to Stereoscopy magazine. It's a wonderful, wonderful journal. Bob, Lawrence, Bob, let's start with you. Your impressions. Tell us what impressed you when you were in Japan.
It was hot. No, I mean, we'd had a heat wave just before the Congress, so I was actually used to the 32, 33 degrees. But yeah, no, we're not talking Fahrenheit here, we're talking centigrade or Celsius. So that's the modern take, not the American old-fashioned numbers. So more like, I don't know, 80 degrees, 85 degrees, something like that. But I've been going to these ISU congresses for a very long time now. I think my first one would be in the 1980s, early 1980s. And just for out of interest, that's the program for the first ISU Congress, which was held in Holland in 1975. And somewhere here, yeah, I've got the program for the Japanese one. Came in a nice little folder, and there were two books. One was for the presenters and the excursions and so on, and then the other one was the shows. And these are the programs that were given for the 2023 Congress. It's come a long way since the show in 1975, and it's very thin, that 1975 one. But I like meeting the people, which makes the whole thing. It doesn't matter where you are. The people are what really makes the ISU Congress. What do you think, Lawrence?
Yeah, the Japanese really like their plastic presentation folders.
Yeah, that's true. The plastic presentation folder with the program on the back.
I'm looking forward to the one in 2 years.
So am I.
Biannual, not bi-weekly, Joe.
Well, no, in America, we say bi-weekly.
Well, you got to buy it more often than that. Come on.
LK, Carlos Danger wants to know: were you on any great excursions? Did you
I did all of the excursions.
And I sat right next to Bob, so I could get all the good pictures.
What, you were copying my positioning and so on?
Your vision.
No, you take better pictures than I do.
Oh. Yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
We often, echoing what Bob just said, we often say it's really the people that make this hobby as wonderful as it is, and also the, hate to use this word, the synergy of actually physically getting people together. Johnny Laser and Joe Pedotto were talking about how the music scene in New York City has changed over the past 30-40 years. Now people get together more virtually or online. In the 70s, that wasn't an option, and you had a club or a bar or a physical place where you hung out. And I think there's no replacing that. I think there's no replacing being in a hotel room with a bunch of 3D crazies.
Yeah.
So on the note of comparing your two 3D skills, you have to present in a few weeks, then and then we can judge which one is best. And Dennis, they're very good too. So let's do that.
Let it be anonymous, and then we can judge ourselves or guess which is which as a quiz.
Another approach. I had suggested a death match, a cage match, but that's just because I recently watched a documentary about a mid-Ohio lower tier wrestling company, where the admission is made, I'm a fat old man who's paid money to fake battle other fat old men in our underwear.
And that's going to be the subject of a stereo jukebox, is it?
Well, I'll have to tell Joe Pedotto. The next time I see him, I'm going to suggest that. Thank you, Bob. Of the shows, we have all three of you here. Of the things in the exhibition hall that you saw, could each of you tell me one favorite? A slideshow, a video.
There was a little thing in the corner, it was probably 2 meters across, a dome. And the guy in there was putting anaglyph shadowgrams on the wall of this dome, which I thought was fascinating. That was part of the trade fair. You can't imagine that, but you get shadows coming towards you.
It's like YouTube in Las Vegas.
Better than Las Vegas.
Except it was a trash bag igloo.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah,
There were a lot of great shows. This year, they didn't judge which were the best, which they had done last year. I of course like Bob Swartz video about Ray Zone.
Of course.
Oh, tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that. What, a tribute video to Ray?
Yes, it was something that he had shot back in the 80s, I think. It was flat, and he went and found all the stereo images and put it together so that it became a 3D presentation. And
He
Yeah.
is a little
it
worker.
was nice seeing him.
He put so much effort and energy into his presentations. We're all the better for it.
I hear he's going to show it in New York if you actually have a physical meeting.
We're
think
threatening
we
to do
have
that.
to-
We're threatening to do that. That's actually an active threat. That we actually get together physically, break bread, drink alcoholic beverages.
Bob's trying to cut in. I think you should kick him out.
No, I want free tickets to come over to New York to do that one.
We used to have some wonderful get-togethers before the pandemic. It remains to be seen how we can move forward and possibly have both physical meetings and do Zoom as well, because we are nothing without you, Dennis, Bob, Lawrence, and people from all over the globe, even in the imaginary land of England. I think that's what really makes these Saturdays together so special. The door is wide open, not to just the local club members and our abilities. I have to say, I'm not the world's greatest stereo shooter. I'm not the world's second greatest stereo shooter. I'm not even on the list of great stereo shooters. And for me, the joy is take me there. Like Dennis's slideshow took me there. I felt I was in his footsteps, seeing what he saw. And I think that's one of the great joys of 3D. See what the photographer saw, be in his footsteps. As a finale, final thoughts. It was, as I understand, when in the pre-show we're talking, it was not entirely glitch free. It was a first time effort, and they did run into some issues, but they solved them all.
Yep. They were incredibly flexible and resourceful, which
Yeah,
is what you have to be when you're running a Congress.
I'll kind of echo what Dennis said. It's great seeing different parts of the world. Like right now, it's almost 10 o'clock in the Netherlands, but in Japan, you seem to get, I didn't see anything expensive. You seem to get your dollar's worth when you bought something. The hotel was reasonable, and the breakfast was great. It was a buffet, and you could travel around the world. You could have Japanese food, you could have American food, and you could eat all you want. And I think I gained some weight.
And that was part of the hotel. The accommodation offered that wonderful breakfast.
Yes.
Well, 3D is important, but I'm an Italian American, and food is like 3D food. They're two essential needs. Dennis, final thoughts from you on this this Congress that just ended. I mean, it was, you guys are barely back. Are you still jet lagged?
Yes.
No, but tradition in the ISU is that the country that's going to organize the next Congress also provides the president of the ISU. So since I'm a current president, it means that I have to now work on the next Congress in 2025. So
I think everybody should now be thinking about getting their plans together to go to that Congress. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, the
from
50th anniversary, right?
Yeah, it's
Correct.
the 50th anniversary, 25th Congress, 18 to 25 August 2025. So put it in your agenda, save the date.
Save the date, absolutely.
And
Where is
we
it
will
going
provide
to
you with
take
more
place?
information in the coming time. So,
Now, Lawrence, you put in a link for the Congress info. If people follow that link, will they also get to info about the upcoming event, the event in 2 years, or as we say in America, bi-weekly?
Yes, it's online right now under Congress on the ISU page, which I put the link in for. The dates, like you said, August 18th through 25th, 2025 at the Wallen, how do you say that?
Okay.
in Wageningen. So when you
That's
get more
it.
information, there will be a link to the Congress website with all the details. So be certain I will come back to also to NYSA Presents with more information when I have it.
Absolutely, we want you to keep us informed and updated. It's such a pleasure to have you here. I hate to bring this up again, but I see in the chat I made a mistake, and I have to acknowledge it. And this is why Americans hate foreigners. You people have foreign languages and live in different countries. You have a different word for everything. So I said, since England got trucks, they don't need their canals to transport goods. And I was corrected. You don't have trucks, you have lorries.
Yep.
Okay. So I stand corrected. A different word for everything. Okay. Bob McAfee has put in an interesting link here for the Looking Glass, a special. I think, are there any other final thoughts from the three of you on the ISU?
Well, Tom Coates just asked where the next one was going to be, and I think, Dennis, you can repeat that information, can't you?
Doris already put it in the chat.
Yeah. So it's Wageningen.
Yep. So
Easy.
that's
Easy for you to say.
it's the same location where it all started in 1975. So we really
Exactly
go
the
back to
same
where it all
location.
started.
Wow, a 50-year and a return to the same location. Sounds like an event that's not to be missed.
Yeah.
Looks like
Agreed.
there might be some presentations then with the pictures taken 50 years ago and today.
Well, my intention is to collect images from all the different congresses and to start each projection block with a short show of a number of years to get an impression of how these congresses have evolved over the different years.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
I already received images from Lawrence, and I'm collecting it from other people as well to get images from all the different congresses, all the different years, to get impressions of who were there, where they were.
Well, you've got 2 years lead time, and it sounds like you're going to need all of it.
Well,
You're definitely going to need all of it.
I think within 1 year we should already have most of it done to get it really on the road. So, and to make sure that everyone has information and is going to book in advance.
So the one in Japan was 48 years before this one, right? So you're sort of doing it cyclical, so that the next to the second one was the one that's just before yours.
It used to be a rota of 10 clubs. So the Stereoscopic Society did the Congress in 1993, when I was thrown in at the deep end to run the theatre, when we had hundreds of projectors and hundreds of shows with different systems, and nightmare. Then in 1995, it was USA. I lose track. It's all on the website, but
Right.
It should have been 2003 for the Stereoscopic Society again. But then Sydney jumped in and said, we'll do the 2001 one. So we had it in 2005 in the UK.
But I'm just saying that this year's thing in Japan was at the same location they were at 48 years ago. And the next
No.
one will be at the one 50 years ago.
No, Japan, this is the first time they did it. So
Oh, the
The
next
48
one.
Expo-
years.
The Expo in 1985 had been in Scuba, where they had a lot of 3D movies playing.
But it wasn't an ISU sponsored event.
Oh, okay.
So the next ISU Congress in 2025, that will come back to where it all started in 75.
We have outlived the age of expos, right? We no longer have expos, or in America we used to call them World's Fairs. We didn't invite the rest of the globe for the most part, but you know, we call them World's Fairs, just like we call our baseball winners the World Series.
I think there's still some World Fair going on in the world.
Are
There
there?
are.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
I-
Maybe not in America, but every other part of the world.
Well, for East Coast kids, the New Yorkers, we were in the mid '60s. We were introduced to Belgian waffles at the 64-65 World's Fair. That was one of the big hits, one of the big imports. I think we're about ready to move into the best after party on Zoom. Dorothy, are you ready to roll our credits?
Yes, I am.
And we'll roll our credits, and then we'll go right into the after party where we're going to have more information about the ISU and others.
New York, so good they named it twice. New York, all the scandal and the vice. I love it, New York, now isn't it a pity? What they say about New York, so good they named it twice. New York, all the scandal and the vice. I love it, New York.
Welcome to the after party of the NYSA, the best after party on Zoom. And we had a great episode. I'd like to start the after party by saying a heartfelt thanks to Johnny Laser. He is our guiding light. He is our shooting star. He is the chief mischief maker and organizer. And even though he was not present on today's show, his fingerprints are all over it because he was the one behind the scenes. He was the one behind the scenes pulling all this together. It was his decision to try and get people who had just been at the ISU. So even though Johnny Laser was not physically here or digitally here, his influence was felt throughout this show. I never hoped to be, never wished to be, never could be a replacement for our Johnny Laser. So thank you for putting up with me. It's not it's not really the NYSA unless Johnny Laser is here, but thank you, and a heartfelt thank you from myself, and Carlos Danger, and also from Joe Pedoto, to the tech crew, to Dorothy especially, who had her hands full today with running our videos. Again, a thank you and a send off to Johnny, and let's begin the after party. What do people want to talk about? I hear there was a conference in Japan. Does anybody know about that?
I was asking about that one because Lawrence actually had posted it on Facebook that there was that conference back in Japan, same location, that had a 180 theater with 2D on the sidewalls and 3D in the center, the kind of thing I've been wanting to do. So that caught my attention. That's why if I misquoted it, let Lawrence fill in the accurate information for me, please.
Is Larry still here? Is Lawrence? Can we? get a response to Mr. Christopher?
I think he left. I think Johnny Laser is going to have a show on that in the future. But
Is that is that plans for an upcoming program?
if I have anything to do with it, but yeah, it was
Mr.
1985.
Mr. Compton, you're one of the stars of the 3D firmament. So of course, if you want a show, we'll give you a show.
Everybody's running out of the room now. Anyways, 1985, it was the expo. So it was the World Scientific Fair. And it was in the same city, Scuba. And they had, it was really the beginning of the immersive 3D film era. They had IMAX's first 3D movie. They had a StereoVision 10 perf 3D 70mm film, and they had a couple other 3Ds. Plus, early 3D TV was debuting, so it was the place to be. It was like one of the top 3 expos ever held. There were 20 million people there.
One thing that I've learned, I'm not a great stereo shooter. I'm not I don't have a fantastic collection of stereo, but I do have a small collection. And one thing that I've learned when you're collecting stereo is the Venn diagram of conflicting interests. You may be looking for a TrueView Donald Duck. You're competing with TrueView 3D collectors, and you're also competing with Disney fans. And one thing I've learned, I guess I kind of have a fascination for these kind of exhibits. I thought they were no longer taking place, but I have again been corrected. Lorries, not trucks. That there was a recent one in Dubai. So I found when I've been trying to collect 3D collectibles, TrueView or any format really, you're bidding against people who want anything at all to do with a World's Fair, the Chicago exhibition, the San Francisco 1933 event. You have kind of that cross collecting, and it tends to drive the price up. So that was where you wanted to be. That's where anyone wanted to be in 3D in 1985. What from 1985 do we still have? What began there that still exists? 3D TV continued, certainly.
Yeah, there's in Scuba, there's some remains of the fair, but not much. Where the fair was is a green park area, but it was like 240 acres. It was a big space, and but we have the 3D movies. That was one of the roller coasters, and that was really coming up back then. And 3D TV came and has gone.
Now, what was the 3D TV experience like in 1985?
They had 5 cameras running, and a pencil lens and lenticular lens. So it was a one-person viewing experience, and it was early. And we talked about 3D TV from 1985 until early 2000s when it actually came out. But it was always at every electronic show. They had an exhibit coming 3D TV, but everybody was trying to outdo everybody else. But it never seemed to come until it finally did.
And then it went.
Well,
Yeah.
I am always a little suspicious when people talk about a new tech and they say 5 to 10 years for widespread adoption, and that always seems to remain the same. It's a receding goal. It's always 5 years away. Well, Japan has been kind of a center of on the cutting edge, let's say, of 3D technology for some time. Yes.
Yeah, that's they had started Scuba as their science city, and it never really took off. So that's why they had the World's Fair there, hoping that people would realize they had a science city. And it's still there, and it's got lots of things going on. We experienced an earthquake in a chair.
A simulated earthquake or a real
No.
earthquake?
Oh, yes, simulated.
Oh, okay, thank God.
Well, it's fairly common, isn't it, earthquake in Japan?
I think so.
Yeah, I've heard some people living there, and you experience that
We
quite
visited
regularly.
a particle accelerator and
Well,
their version of NASA, and
the earthquake was the National Research Institute for Earth Science and Disaster Resilience. If you
doesn't
remember.
it seem like they're just looking for government money to
Yeah.
start?
Now, Lawrence, you mentioned this town as being a science city, a government-sponsored project. Could you explain that a little?
I think
What would a science city be?
I think what it turned out to be, all the big companies there, Sony, whoever else, TDK, anyway, all the Japanese up and coming electrical companies built offices and plants there. So right now it has lots of office buildings, and it's a lot of the development.
In New Jersey, we would call that an industrial park. Calling it a science city, I mean, I want to see flying cars.
They have lots of trees.
That's another technology. When I was a child reading comic books, we were told, you know, in the 1970s, your daddy will commute to work in his flying car.
I think they're coming. It's
But
5 to 10 years.
5 or 10 years. Well, all I don't know about, you know, we this Saturday, I think we are truly celebrating the global impact of 3D and the global connections that we can make.
I'll drink to that.
Here, cheers. And as I said earlier, I think there really is there's great value even in us digitally getting together and sharing. I would say, I don't know if this is true for everybody else. Every week at these Zoom meetings, they're educational for me. I literally, as an adult, learn things. I know you don't mean to teach me anything, and it's because I am so ignorant, but every week I learn things.
Bob Aldridge, could you tell us
Me?
a little
Yeah.
bit about, yes, hi, Bob.
Hi.
You talked about your favorite thing at the ISU Congress. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? That's the kind of stuff I love.
Well, the people.
I think the
I mean, the
NXF
shadowgram was what?
Oh, that was in the trade fair. Well, I only got to see it for a few minutes because I was really busy at the trade fair. I got lumbered with showing a medium format stereo camera at the trade fair, but I managed to hop in there for like literally 5 minutes, and the chap's got 2 LED lights on a gantry, little thing pointing up at the sky, at the walls of the igloo, and he's got a number of objects that he can use to cast shadows. And of course, the 2 lights cast a red shadow and a blue shadow. And when you look through anaglyph glasses, depending on where he puts his master, his hand or whatever he's using, the shadow moves in space on the wall as you look at it. So he had them coming over and enveloping you, and it was very effective. But as I say, I only got to see it once and very briefly.
Jerry Marks did a variation on that with Pulfric which I saw at his studio in New York, and it was a live performance. It was about a dancer, and she was on a rotating
Right. Yeah.
little turntable, and all you had to do is wear Pulfric glasses, but the shadow, just one light shining the shadow on the wall behind. But since it was Pulfric, just that slight difference, made it work
Yeah.
beautifully. It
If
was
you
really
shade one
something.
eye slightly, then that delays
Yes.
the signal. Yeah.
And
No,
Bob, thank you so much for bringing that up, mentioning Jerry's work there. A version of that, I think, was in it was in a San Francisco museum for a quarter century. Professor Pulfric's museum. And yes, it's a marvelous effect, but this is an interesting, anaglyph variation, casting shadows like that.
And especially because it's in a dome, you could also have the impression that the spaceship is flying overhead of you.
Yeah.
Or when they had the tube, and by moving the tube over the LED lights, it's as if you go into a tunnel. So
it was
it's
very
very
I was
simple,
at-
but it's very effective.
I was at a 3D media conference in Montreal in the 80s, and they one of the things they showed on a dome screen, they had an IMAX screen, and it was just wireframe graphics, but it was anaglyph on a big dome screen. So that was, I love stuff like that. Yeah.
If people forget, there is depth in a darkness. You have relativity of black. It's just having to create a contrast. So I shot a stage show, and people will think it's a black mat until suddenly they see one of the shadows move, and they realize it's actually in the negative space, and it's the audience. It's part of the picture.
Well, back in the 1980s, it was common at planetariums to have laser shows late on a Friday, late on a Saturday, to soundtrack of maybe Pink Floyd, and they would be laser projections in the dome of like the Hayden Planetarium or other such venues. I went to one, and it was a spectacular 3D laser show. Then I asked the rest of the people, nobody else was wearing glasses, and they said, "No, you're the only one who saw it in 3D." So that. Well, I might have been altered at that time.
All of the IMAXs are especially currently are being made with dome theaters in mind as well. So the 3D is all down in the lower third, and there are some that actually have the 3D and the dome together in the same theater. Most of the domes are 2D, and most domes also are ones where you're either sitting or standing. And I want a dome where I can lie down. And that center dome would be perfect place for the 3D if you're facing up at a ceiling,
Very, very, very good point, Bob, John. Very, very, very.
And there are domes, I'm told, when I asked about it about 10 years ago, that do have that, where you are lying on the ground. But that's hippie stuff.
Well, I can also remember being at a car show once where there was a small dome, and they had a laser show. Again, I saw it in 3D, and I said, "That's the most amazing glasses-free 3D I've ever seen." And everybody else said, "No, Joe, that was a 2D laser show."
Yeah. Well, that's what you get for one of the D's should not be drugs. And I did post in the chat if anyone cares. Again, the link for the 3D Video Classic sampler I put together almost 20 years ago. And where else are you going to see Dale Robertson in a shootout from Devil's Canyon with Space Hunter and the sheriff from It Came From Outer Space? But also I listed the email for the Greek, who's the notorious one of those 3D bootleggers, but his email yesterday just had added Corporal versus Napoleon, which is actually Reshevsky versus Napoleon. That was produced and stars Vladimir Zelensky as Napoleon, and was shot in 3D about 12 years ago. and our local stereographer, Jim Carbonetti, was the stereographer on that. So
John Christopher, could you repeat that? Are you talking about the Zelensky who's currently
Yes.
much in the news as the president of the Ukraine?
Yes. And this is the one that Jim Carbonetti sent John Laser stuff 2 years ago to put into his Ukraine deal, which he never did. And I have the whole movie on a thumb drive as an over and under. But it's one of those weird codecs that my LG will recognize, and there's a separate thing for the subtitles and puts it together. But if I run it through, my Blu-ray player, it doesn't know how to put the two pieces together. But this one, they
this
must have it
has to
online
be.
somewhere. It must be one of those. There are sites out there that have a lot of over, under, and side by side, so you can download. So it must now be available because the Greek usually gets it from that kind of a source, and then makes a frame pack Blu-ray out of it.
Well, this has to be the only current world leader who's involved in an international ground war, who has a background as an entertainer comedian and was filmed in 3D.
No, there's probably more of them out there. I mean, Hitler was a big fan. And you can go, you can get Abraham Lincoln at the Library of Congress in 3D. It's just a matter of getting.
But no videos.
And they're not. And apparently, according to Jim, it was shot in Ukraine, even though it was shot in Russian. And so many of the locations no longer exist as a result of this war. But the fun thing about it is that this is the Russians trying to stop Napoleon from doing to them what they are now doing to Ukraine. And it really should be broadcast everywhere so people get the message. But, Zelensky as a short person that wants to conquer the world. Who'd have thought?
The line between entertainment and politics continues to blur.
Well, that's why Zelensky, knows what he's doing when he's fighting Putin. He just uses the same tactic. Of course, I haven't seen him do what they do in the movie where the guy dresses as a girl trying to get to close to Napoleon to kill him just to satisfy the girl he wants to romance who's dressing up as a boy. And while they're all dancing to 1980s music. So it's like, it's a very serious movie.
Well, thank you, and thank you for posting that link. Also, Dorothy has put in the chat the Instagram link for the ISU 2023 Japan. That is thank you, Dorothy.
Yeah, the problem, I think you need to be logged in to actually see it. I could share my screen in 5 minutes and show you the
Oh, please do.
the igloo you were talking about, because it's on it.
I also put the igloo as my background.
So do you see it? You need to do parallel viewing, because that's the only.
Cross-eyed or parallel.
Yeah, cross-eyed or parallel. Parallel is up and cross-eye is below. So there's this one. Let me see if I can change. So that's the trade fair. Whoop, looks like, oh, what is it? Oh, that's a little.
The promotion video.
Yeah. Which was pretty funny.
Oh, that is not a promotion video. It's another video.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love this. Are those characters supposed to be zombies, the way their hands are?
Yes, they are.
And is that a COVID virus? What is that?
It's
Oh, look at that.
Oh, and they become colorful when they they get on the path to the ISU.
They also had this arcade style music associated to that.
Oh yeah, I actually muted it. Could you hear the sound?
Yes.
No,
Yeah, last part.
Oh,
we
okay,
could
that
we
was
could at the
on
end. We could at
towards the
yeah.
end. Yeah, okay, because I actually turned on the sound. So yeah, apparently that's some vendors. Let me see if I do this. Okay, if I do that, then I see all the.
Yeah.
Well, the images.
That's an 8mm 3D projection.
Yeah.
Cool.
There's Vernoux, a Frenchman who draws in 3D.
Yeah, so it looks like his drawing table is way smaller than it used to be.
Hmm.
Because I remember reading an article, and it was a huge machine he has, a contraption he had.
Yeah.
Watercolor painting.
What do you know what this is? What's being shown here?
I think this is a table of the Tokyo Club, the Tokyo Stereo Club with some stuff they sell, buttons and stickers and T-shirts.
So it's anaglyph T-shirts, apparently, right?
And then is there a black light on that other T-shirt? What is the T-shirt that's kind of purplish?
Not sure about that one.
I think it's the light, isn't it? The light. Does it project this on his T-shirt?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Now that's something you don't see much anymore. Anaglyph images on T-shirts.
They're coming back, I think, on Etsy market and all that. You see some sometimes. So that was a paper stereo viewers. Okay, and then we're back to the
So this is the dome.
That's a
dome
yeah.
fair, yeah. Live
And
anaglyph.
was it also filled with little spongy balls?
No spongy balls now.
So how many people are using it at a time, and are they lying down or sitting up?
It's I think it had a capacity of about 5 or 6 people at the time. You're sitting on the ground, looking up at the side and the top of the dome.
Because we have the mini sphere here in the Burbank, California area where they are using it to do the productions for the giant sphere in Vegas. And it looks very similar, like they're almost like little cousins. Except the one in Vegas is doing all these projections on the outside now.
Okay.
Yeah, we decided to give a little known struggling band a break. A group called U2. I don't know if everybody's heard of them, but yeah, they apparently quite an impressive show and experience. I mean, even before it officially opened, and there were like kind of teaser videos of people driving along, and the exterior projections just look staggering. But we want them all in 3D. Actually, U2 appeared in there's a 3D concert movie of U2, the group. The stereo, I saw that. I happened to see that in the theater, and I thought the stereo was quite good.
It was excellent.
Unfortunately, we're not going to see it in any other format because it's just for IMAX. And they, it's just like the Wings of Courage. Jean-Jacques Annaud in his contract, it can't play anywhere unless it's playing in the IMAX 3D. So, you know, he thinks that's the best experience. I can understand that, except there are no IMAX 3D theaters around anymore, except, you know, very few museums.
And I would say the original full size. We have what are branded IMAX theaters locally in suburban Connecticut, where I live. They are not, in fact, to my view, an IMAX. It is not an IMAX experience. It's a big screen, but it's not really IMAX.
Yeah, and well, for one thing, the real IMAX ratio is taller than it is wide. So like I say, it's like the Dome, where you have the triple size. So even Wings of Courage, when it played here, we didn't have an IMAX theater in LA yet. So the Edwards Cinemas, right on the border of Orange County and LA County, had the first ones, and it was a multiplex one. So it was more like the 185-to-1. But you had helmets instead of glasses, with 6 speakers in your ears to get the thoughts of the characters.
Now, John, correct me if I'm misremembering this, but there was one in Manhattan, the original IMAX that I remember going through Manhattan. Not only did you have a helmet, but the seating was very severely raked, and you were told not to get up and try and you couldn't get up to take a bathroom break. They didn't want you moving around when the lights are off.
Well, that may be the case in New York, because they have a lot of things that were like crunched together. This was not raked, but you know, it was a multiplex. So they did have color-coded seats, so that for 2D you could sit in any seat, but for 3D you weren't allowed to sit in the sides.
Oh, good.
And the heads of the audience still showed up in the picture. That's one of the reasons why real IMAX is not fun. Bono was down with the fire escape in his head at the IMAX theaters in Universal Studios, because it went all the way to the floor, and you had these stairways going up through his head. And for Wings of Courage, yes, your audience's heads are there, and so, well, that gives you the sense of 3D depth. But then you cut from a wide shot to a close-up, and that people's heads are still in the same space, and it was difficult for the first narrative to figure out how to do the IMAX 3D.
I saw the U2 3D IMAX at the AMC in New York City, and it was that wonderful raked audience, and nobody's head was in the way. And it was wonderful. But I was curious. We went and saw it again it was running in 3D, but at a regular size screen. And I could sit like 3/4 of the way back from the screen and I'm out of the theater, but it looked very flat. And I then said, let's go down and sit in the 4th row. And suddenly the depth was there again. And it taught me that that it's that whole problem, I guess, that Jean-Jacques Arnaud was thinking about, is that the depth only works properly if it's projected on the huge. If
it depends.
Actually, down. Yes, go ahead.
It should be the opposite. The closer you are, the less depth you feel, because 3D can only come halfway across. So the further back you are, the more it can pop out into the front of the screen. But it does depend on how it's set up. And I was surprised when Paul Taylor was telling me, because at ours in the California Science Museum, the last row of the theater, the glasses only cover 1/3 of the screen. And he's saying, well, no, we account for that. So there are parts of the screen that are in 2D. They plan on it that way. So in your case, maybe more of the 2D section showed up within the eyes.
John, I want to thank you for your contributions. Bob, we are running out of time. So maybe we can continue this next Saturday. I don't know what we're going to be doing next Saturday, so I can't give you a promo right now. But I can tell you that if you're interested in 3D next Saturday, this is where you need to be. You need to be at the NYSA. You also need to tell your friends, your relatives, your enemies, your employers. If you have any chattel, if you have pets, encourage them all. We want them all in front of a computer screen next Saturday at 3 p.m. Again, I want to throw a salute to Johnny Laser, gone but not forgotten. He will be back. He will be back. He
A threat or a promise?
both.
A threat or a
Both,
promise?
yes, both. I just want to say one other thing. As a longtime zombie fan, it was wonderful to see that little animation with zombies for the ISU. So zombies, they're everywhere. Thank you to Dorothy. Thank you to all of our contributors, Bob, Lawrence, Dennis. I think, even though Johnny wasn't here with us, I think we've put I'm going to turn my hand down. Lower hand. I think we put together a decent program. Thank you to all our contributors. I'm edging into asking Dorothy again if she'll run those final credits and get us off the air. Or I can just keep talking for hours. But